Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at my first standalone AM4 motherboard review, and it's from Gigabyte, or as they keep asking me to say, Aorus. Gigabyte Aorus. Anyway, it's the X370 Gaming 5. In the UK and at overclockers, right at this present moment in time, you can pick up this board for £200. So it's a little bit more expensive than some of the kind of entry-level X370s. So we're going to hope that it does come with a little bit more in with the package. And to be fair, it does straight away, because you can see there's a plethora of high-quality chokes and caps around the board. So it's got quite a few CPU phases, quite a few power phases going on. Now it does have RGB, which I will show you in a moment. But the other things that we want to pick out on the board is we've got the steel bracing for the PCI Express. And you've got them on all three. These two are your PCI Express 3, and this one is actually PCI Express 2, which comes from the chipset, and that's also where the PCI Express 1s come from, because that's chipset based. Now you may be wondering why I'm holding this in my hand, but it's because I've only got one Gigabyte motherboard stand, and it's a cardboard one, and it has logos for the blue team all over it. So I decided not to use it in this today, because people keep moaning when they see the other logo. They just want to see the Ryzen one. Anyway, so other things, RGB, it is everywhere, but you can see, if I bring you in nice and close, you can see, as you'll see them lit up later, the ones in between the memory slots. The fan headers around the board, you've got system fan 1 here, then you've got 5, and I'm just looking for the number 5 and 2 apparently here. 5 is a pump header as well. There's another pump header at the bottom as well as that, as well as 2 other. Now you can use the pump headers for fan headers as well. They just have a slightly higher amperage. The pump headers are actually a really good place to cheat, and if you're going to use a PWM splitter, I use them like 1:3, or you're going to run one off into one of those little unpowered splitters, then the pump headers are the ones to use if you can, because they've got they're more capable of more throughput. So keep that in mind. I don't know the actual amperage numbers on the Gigabyte boards, so you'll just have to look in your manual. Now, up here, LED C1. Now this is an RGB out. Now I'm going to assume this is going to be in case you buy one of the lower end Ryzen chips, and they do come in RGB, and I think, but I would say if I was going to put an RGB connector somewhere, I would put it up here near the CPU fans, so that you could also use it for external RGB lights on the board as well. So I think it's a bit of a strange position, but they do have another one down here. Now this is RGBW. CableMod do RGBW kits, and basically the RGBW means you have a dedicated white. So rather than having the RGB white, which let's face it is normally slightly yellow, or more often than not it has a bluey purpley tinge to it, because it's essentially all 3 of the RGBs turned on full brightness. With this you can have a dedicated channel to just have white, so that's always kind of nice. Other thing, M.2 here. M.2, it's actually right underneath the graphics card. It's probably the worst place that they could have put it if you really think about it, considering M.2s can dislike getting warm. I think it would have probably been a lot nicer if this, the CMOS battery, had been up here underneath that, and that had been further down here out the way, so it could have got some airflow, because it's essentially just going to be getting insulated by, let's face it, probably a hot graphics card. So it's not the best M.2 placement. It does have U.2, but unless you're one of the very, very few people that have bought an Intel drive that supports it, it's not really going to matter. Positive things to say though is it does have 2 internal USB 2s. A lot of motherboards seem to be phasing these out now, but 2 internal USB 2s, so it means that you could essentially have your AIO and your power supply plugged into this, lovely bubbly, or your AIO and your front panel for your case, it doesn't really matter. But you've got 2 internal USB 3s as well. This is all kind of nice. Poster readout here, so you can tell if you do get any problems. These are actually 4 little LEDs, and these tell you what's going on when your system is booting as well. I would say that if you do end up buying one of these, there you go, VGA, CPU, boot, DRAM, I would write that down for the first few times that you're doing stuff, especially if you're overclocking. Draw yourself a little diagram, because it will help you work out what's gone wrong if something does go wrong. So the reset switch is there. BIOS switch is there, so you can clear the CMOS with a switch. There's also a header down here as well, so you can do it. Just remember, again, if you're going to end up using this board long term, swat up and work out that the outside white one is reset and the black one on the inside is clear CMOS. You don't want to lose all your overclock settings in between if you have a bad flash, or not a bad flash, if you have a bad boot or something like that by pressing the wrong one. I actually think they should probably have been much further apart. Down here you do have switches. Now the top one is the BIOS switch, and that's so you can switch between the two BIOSes that are on there, so you could effectively have a rip snorting overclocked BIOS, and then you could have a more basic setup. You can also store different versions of BIOS on there as well, so you could have one as your normal one with your setup, and you can have two as you're trying out the updated one. And with Gigabyte BIOS updates, I would seriously suggest that if you do a BIOS update, you flick it over onto the one that you've not been using, flash that, and then test it out. Because then if it's not that great, you can easily just shut your system down, flick it back over again, go back to your old BIOS and your old settings with minimal hassle. This for these boards, especially on the Z170, so I don't know whether it's going to be the same on these, but it quite possibly could be because it's the same BIOS engineers. This can be very, very helpful. So another couple of tips for you there. Then you've got the amp up section down here for the audio, and then when we get round the back, I'm just going to show you just here quickly. This says Intel Gigabit LAN and this says Killer. So you actually do get one of each on the back as well. You can't aggregate them, they're separate, but it does mean that you can choose between the two. This is your DAC amp up. This is also a really good place if you want to charge anything like your iPad or your phone or anything. You can use these because they put a little bit more power through. PS2, for those of you that are still using them, you do get a HDMI out, so if later on, or when later on, the APUs and stuff with internal graphics on the CPU come out, you will be able to use that. And then you've got a plethora of USBs on there as well. You've also got USB-C, USB 3.1C and an A, and then gold-plated pickups for the audio. So there's a lot going on. Okay, so a look at the board all lit up. Some may say it's a bit like a Christmas tree, can be quite a lot. Thankfully they are RGB, so that you can change the colours. Couple of funky little things is this little part down here, as I've already said, is a removable strip of plexi, which I'm hoping that somewhere along the line they're going to introduce the custom versions of this. I'm assuming that SIs and stuff will probably do customised ones, but we do need Gigabyte to bring out versions of this. I have asked, but I've not seen any even plain ones that you can customise for yourself, and I think that was meant to have been the point all along. I certainly know a few people that have bought them along those lines, so that does need to happen. The other thing along the lines with the RGBs, or all the lights are, it's pretty much 3 phases as well, so you can't change them all independently. You can't just turn off the PCI Express lights, for example. I would say though that if you did want to, if you were having problems with your lights and you didn't know which ones you wanted, consider using the white ones if you want them to be slightly more understated. We do have really nice ones down the middle of the memory slots here, and then you've got some odd picky out lights like around the outside of the board. It does bring a nice kind of aspect to it. So the zones are pretty much down the middle, the right hand side, and then the left hand side, which is actually just this little slip above the amp up audio section. On some of the other boards that we've seen in the past, you did have some RGBs up here, but they've gone against it for this one, and I actually think on this board at least it suits it better. Okie dokie then, peeps, so on to performance. One thing I will say is when we do get into the graphs, the Asus X370 Pro results are the results from the actual CPU review that I've done, because I have done a rather lengthy Ryzen 1800X review on the channel. It's an hour long. I do go into quite a bit of detail, so it's not one for the short attention span people out there. But yes, this is the first kind of proper standalone review that I've done. And it's actually quite a good one really, because I do need to have done a motherboard test beforehand to be able to know whether this is actually going to be any good or not. So, overclocking on this, I did get it up to 4.1. I didn't manage to with the Asus, and it was because the load line calibration wasn't quite stable enough. With this one it did need manually set into high though. It's low, medium, high, turbo, extreme. The other ones just wildly, literally just boost the volts to a ridiculous level, whereas I want to see a really nice manual, you know, stable voltage, because I've obviously decided what I want my voltage to be. I don't then need something else putting them up even more. Anyway, so it did really well once I had set that. It was also the first time I'd seen 3200 megahertz memory. Now, the way that the memory kind of timing and stuff works slightly differently on this time, where you have to actually get code from AMD to put into the BIOS. But weird thing with this is 3200 megahertz worked fine, but the 2666 kit that I used in the review on the last board didn't work at all. So it was a bit of a weird one where I was having to get other like memory that did work, which was a 3000 megahertz kit, and then I was having to turn it back. So I was having to use all the settings and the timings and everything, and I was having to do it manually, and then it would work fine. But actually putting a 2600 megahertz kit in this, which was a Corsair LPX kit, it actually wouldn't start at all. So it was a bit of a strange one. Well, it would start, but I couldn't DOCP it, which was their version of XMP. It would start at like 2133, but couldn't actually get it running it rated. So to get it running it rated, I had to use another kit, like I said, 3000, put that in, and then use all the timings and turn it back down. So it was a bit of a palaver, really. But that is just early BIOS. Now, I do genuinely hope that will get fixed pretty quickly, but it is down to kind of their BIOS team to sort it out, and yeah, we'll see if it gets done. Moving on to performance though, like I said, 4.1 gigahertz was great. We saw 3200 megahertz was also great. Stock, we literally just, well, I had to manually set the 2666, but then we run all the tests like that with 2666 memory, and then the overclock we kind of move up. The highest that we got on the Asus, which is the other one in the graph, for memory at least, was 2933. So this going above and going to 3200 was great. It was something that there was a lot of kind of chit chat and, you know, worry about memory speeds in the past. And to be honest with you, even I was worried about memory speeds. And there was all, you know, a bit, oh, we don't know. But there was quite a nice boost from the faster memory as well, and I don't know if it's psychosomatic. It's stuff that I'm going to have to kind of look into in more depth. Now, a lot of people ask me to do kind of boot timings and stuff. It's never something that I've really bothered with, but with this it was quite strange, where from 2666 to 3200 it was clearly starting faster. So that is an area of something that I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention to in the future, and it may mean that I end up having to run a few more tests, which means I'm going to have to talk for a bit longer, which means the videos are probably going to end up a bit longer. But we'll see. It's something I will pay more attention to when I've not got, you know, people jumping on my back wanting reviews done. You know, oh, can you get it done at the end of the weekend? So yeah. So memory performance, if I find my graph for memory performance, you can see that we do get a tidy boost. You can clearly see the 2666 results at the bottom, but then you can see there's a nice tidy step, 2933, and then up to the top of the graph, 3200 megahertz with the Gigabyte. Now, the fact that we've gone up a bandwidth or a speed, whatever you want to say, and gone up to 3200 megahertz without there being a drop, because you can push things too far and they can tail off. For argument's sake, with X99, going from 3200 megahertz sometimes to 3400 megahertz actually means that you get less performance. So the fact that this has gone up clearly shows that it's capable. It may even mean that there's a little bit more there at a later date as well. But going up rather than down, believe it or not, is a very good sign. So that's a really nice one there. And it does mean for all those kind of proper enthusiast, power-hungry versions of you that are out there that want the absolute best and want to, you know, spend all your money, then you can do. One thing I will say is Corsair LPX at this present moment in time on the current BIOS, which is the F3F, Corsair LPX 3200 megahertz and G.Skill Trident Z do work with DOCP and in the board properly. Now, we're hoping those lists get made bigger and all that kind of stuff, and I haven't obviously got every memory kit out there, but you'd be amazed, like I said to you before, about a 2666 kit that I couldn't enable DOCP on. So I'm just kind of giving you those so you have you do have places to go, and you can think to yourself, should I be buying that? Shouldn't I be buying that? Cinebench, it was another one that they shouted at in large ways. AMD were always going on about it, but obviously we've only got AMD in these graphs because we're doing motherboard reviews, not CPU reviews now. But you can see that the overclock is at the top of the graph. Quite strangely though, stock is at the bottom of the graph, and that seemed to be familiar throughout quite a few of the stock results. That does again lead me to think that it's something BIOS related, but if I'm particularly honest about Gigabyte and BIOS updates, it makes me nervous to think that they might do like they did with Z270 and totally ruin the boards with half-assed updates. So one of the things I would say to the Gigabyte BIOS engineers is this is quite clearly working at the moment. Do not release any updates unless you are 100% sure that it's going to be totally fine, because there's a lot of media out there that have tested 20 million versions of your BIOSes and we're tired of doing it. So please do not put another update on the website unless you're absolutely certain it's absolutely airtight. We do not want to see ridiculous CPU voltages being put in and then us having to argue with you for weeks to get them turned back down again. We do not want to go through that again. I will not mention it again as long as you do your job properly. Right. Yes, you have been told, and I will probably be told off for saying that as well. Anyway, we move on to single core performance. Again with Cinebench, one of the things you can see here is there is an itty bitty change going from one to the next one. So we're seeing a nice increase. In fact, there was probably a bigger increase going from 4 gigahertz to 4.1 gigahertz with the Asus Prime, and then the going up to the Gigabyte at the top of the graph. So that was a nice boost. We liked seeing that. 3D Mark, I wanted to kind of put this in to kind of mix it up a little bit, in that when it came to 3D Mark, the Asus with a lower clock actually scored better, and also Asus with a stock clock actually scored better as well. Now, I'm not doing this to big Asus up, I'm actually doing this to raise attention to the fact, worryingly again, all right, I've said it again, that this is going to be an area that the BIOS engineers again do need to focus on, because the 3D performance and the gaming performance, if you go and have a look, it didn't do as well as expected. And again, onto the gaming, with this you can see the overclock at the top did well. Now, one of the things with this that we can look at is you've got the stock one at the bottom of the graph by quite a bit. So that's one of the kind of areas that's, again, if you hadn't tested other boards, you wouldn't notice it. But there is a bit of a chunk taken off with the stock. So those of you out there are just going to fit it and forget about it, then you will hopefully benefit from some BIOS optimizations and them sorting a few things out. I personally think it could be something to do with turbo not working properly, or it does turbo up like it should do. It does use the XFR, but I think there's something not quite right there, and they can tune that and it can probably run a little bit better. Overclock does do really well. What this also shows us as well, if you think about it with an open line rather than just frames per second, is that Gears of War actually does like more than one core. So I would say Gears of War is quite a multi-threaded game, because the difference between 4 gigahertz to 4.1 gigahertz is quite large, and I don't think you would get that big a step in front if it wasn't for the fact that it was actually kind of using all of those cores. So it did quite well in that respect. So that is the end of the performance, and saying the word performance is the award that we're going to give it. We're going to give it the OC3D Performance Award, because yes, it's our first proper standalone review, but we did get that extra 3200 megahertz memory, and if I'm 100% honest, I'm genuinely surprised that it's arrived so soon. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting no end of arguments, and well, not arguments, but why isn't this working? Why isn't that working? Can you leave the review another couple of weeks so that we can get you another BIOS update? And actually, this works pretty well. But then again, the Z270 Gaming 7 did at launch as well, and then it didn't do so well when there was BIOS revisions. Oh, said it again. Anyway, So right at this present moment in time, with the F3F BIOS that I was given, that I will stick a link to on the website if you're interested in it, because it's actually newer than the one on their website and it's the last time we're going to be doing it, but it does work really well. As it stands here like this, it's lovely, and I would genuinely, for some advice, not just for this board, but for Ryzen in general, if you don't want to overclock, fine. I need to do you a manual CPU volt guide, because it will make a huge difference to your temps. You can also set a manual multiplier across all of the cores as well to stop them dancing around all over the place, and that will actually give you a decent boost in performance. If you want to run high-speed memory as well, this one is doing very well with high-speed memory, but it is, and it's not they are very picky about which kits. So I can say Trident Z at the moment is very good, and I can say LPX at the moment is working very well with this. Weirdly, like I said, and it's one of the reasons why we know that it's a BIOS glitch and, you know, not bad memory or anything like that. It's the 2066 wouldn't run it rated at all, and I ended up putting a 3000 megahertz kit in and putting all the settings and timings and everything in and doing it manually but turning it down. So it is a bit of a weird one at the moment, but this is just going to be part of the party games that we're going to be playing with Ryzen over the next few weeks as things do get optimized. Now, I know there has been a lot of chat about optimizing and, you know, games not fully supporting it yet. Well, I'm not going to jump in on that. Do you know what I mean? It did seem to be like, oh, wait for Ryzen, and now it's, oh, wait for Ryzen to be optimized. In all honesty, with Ryzen, if you wanted better game performance, you needed a higher clock speed, and that is the end of the discussion. That is where it would have been. But to be honest with you, with something like the 1800X, which is going to be the processor I will be testing all the motherboards with, it's a workstation CPU more than an all-out gaming CPU. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those ones where you can use it for rendering and you can use it for transcoding and your modelling, and loads of people have been shouting at me that I've been not mentioning audio engineers. For you know, a processor to have this kind of power for half the price of the nearest competition is a very positive thing. It is going to get more complicated as the core numbers drop though, and to see whether the price differences stay as large though, because I think as the core numbers drop, we would probably have wanted the megahertz to increase as well. So it is going to be an interesting time. But if you're in the market for an AM4 motherboard, performance award, because this one is thoroughly capable of getting pretty much every last drop of performance out of it that it can do. Gigabyte do need to do, like I said, at stock, they do need to fine tune the stock performance, because I think there might be something going on with the multiplier not being as fast, or, you know, not running as long. I don't know. And the 3D performance does need a tweak. But if you're a manual goer and you want to get in there and you want to set your multiplier yourself and you want to overclock it with manual volts and all that sort of stuff, you will be able to. But as with all Ryzen, one thing I can say is you are going to need to invest heavily in your cooling, because I don't think the boards are going to make a great deal of difference in the temperatures right now, because they do appear very warm, and we've not really gotten to the bottom of why yet. So as far as an air cooler is concerned, I would be massively turning my volts down. You wouldn't be able to overclock. If you want to overclock, an absolute bare minimum is going to be a high quality 240mm AIO. If you want to go further than that point, you probably will do well, but you will get to a point where it doesn't matter how many extra radiators you add in, all you're going to be able to do is turn the fan speeds down. It's not going to drop temperatures anymore. But at the moment, custom water cooling is probably going to be the best way to be able to live with a high overclock long term. So keep all those kind of things in mind, because the money that you save on processors, you may have to then spend on cooling, which is kind of, you know, times evolve. But it is all very positive. We all, as a whole, community, as in, it doesn't matter which side of the fence that you sit on, doesn't matter which pill that you take, doesn't matter which t-shirt that you put on, the whole thing, red or blue, you actually want this to do quite well. and they are doing very well. Yes, there are a few places where they could make some refinements and could do a few things better, but hey, this is good. This is a big step in the right direction, and that's how everyone needs to see it. So yes, tangent, but this is Tiny Tom Logan with the OC3D Performance Award winning. I keep forgetting to say Aorus, which is why I've put this up here, and thank you to Gigabyte for stealing this from the show stand and sending it to me. But the Gigabyte Aorus X370 Gaming 5, I call it the GG5. GG. And that's definitely going to fall off one day. Anyway, me out.